You think you're disciplined. You think turning off every notification makes you focused, efficient, different from the masses who jump every time their phone buzzes. You wear your zero notifications like a badge of honor. I control my attention, you tell yourself. I'm not a dopamine slave like everyone else. You're wrong. This isn't about productivity. This isn't about focus. This isn't about being above the digital noise. This is about fear. This is about the story you've been telling yourself since you were 8 years old, a story about why silence felt safer than being seen, why disappearing felt better than disappointing. Let's cut through the logical shield you've built. Let's talk about what your zero notifications are actually costing you. You tell people it's about deep work. You say you can't have your attention fragmented every 5 minutes. You've read the books. You know what constant interruptions do to your cognitive performance. You've optimized your environment for focus, and notifications are the enemy of focus. It sounds reasonable. It sounds mature, but I want you to notice something. Notice how defensive you get when someone questions your notification settings. Notice the flash of annoyance, maybe even anger, when you see someone else's phone lighting up constantly. Notice the quiet superiority you feel when a friend apologizes for missing a text, and you think, I would never be that accessible. That's not discipline, that's identity armor. You've built your sense of self around not being like those people, the people who are reachable, responsive, available. And now you can't turn notifications back on without feeling like you're betraying who you are. But here's the question you've been avoiding. If your notification settings are truly just about productivity, why does the thought of turning them on make you feel unsafe? Let's talk about your daily experience. You check your phone constantly. You do. You just won't admit it. You've trained yourself to pull down the refresh screen, to tap each app icon individually, to manually hunt for the validation you claim you don't need. And every time you check, every time you see that empty inbox, that zero unread messages, you feel a split second of relief. Good, nothing expected of me, followed immediately by a quieter feeling, a hollowness. The faint echo of a question you won't let yourself ask: is anyone thinking about me? You've created a system where you can never be caught off guard, you can never be interrupted, you can never be surprised. But you've also created a system where you can never be reached, and you tell yourself this is power. You tell yourself you've conquered the digital age, that you've hacked attention, that you're free from the tether that enslaves everyone else. But freedom doesn't feel lonely. Freedom doesn't require constant vigilance. Freedom doesn't look like checking your phone every 45 minutes just to confirm that no one needs you. That's not freedom. That's a prison you built yourself with the door unlocked, but you're too scared to walk out. You're the unreachable one, the person who takes days to respond, the mystery, the one who's so hard to get a hold of. You've built a mystique around your unavailability. You've made scarcity your brand, but I want you to consider something uncomfortable. What if you're not mysterious? What if you're just absent? There's a term in psychology called avoidant attachment. It describes people who learned early that relying on others is dangerous. That needing connection leads to pain, so they developed a strategy: need nothing, want nothing, expect nothing, stay armored, stay distant, stay safe. And the most insidious part, avoidant attachment feels like independence. It feels like strength. It feels like you're the only one who has your act together. But here's what's actually happening. You've conflated self-sufficiency with self-isolation. You've convinced yourself that needing people is weakness, that being available is submission, that responsiveness is surrender. And you found the perfect tool to enforce this belief: your notification settings. Every notification you turn off is a boundary, but not the healthy kind. The kind that says, I will not risk being needed. The kind that says, I will not risk needing. The kind that says, I will not risk the vulnerability of being reachable. You're not protecting your attention. You're protecting yourself from connection. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Think back to your childhood. What did attention feel like? Did attention mean criticism? Did it mean expectations you couldn't meet? Did it mean you were about to be told you were too much, too loud, too demanding, too needy? Or did attention mean disappointment? Did you learn that people don't follow through, that they forget you, that you're an afterthought? Or did attention mean chaos, a volatile parent whose mood determined whether you were safe, an environment where being noticed meant being in the blast radius? Somewhere along the way, you learned a lesson that saved you then, but is destroying you now. Attention is dangerous, so you learn to make yourself small, quiet, easy to overlook. You learned that if you didn't ask for anything, you couldn't be denied. If you didn't reach out, you couldn't be rejected. If you didn't need a connection, you couldn't be hurt by its absence. And now, decades later, you have a phone that perfectly reflects that strategy. A device designed for connection, repurposed for disconnection. A communication tool you've configured to ensure you're never actually caught communicating. This isn't about notifications. This is about the part of you that learned, before you had words for it, that being seen was a threat. And you've spent your whole life building structures, including your digital ones, to stay invisible. I am not going to tell you to turn your notifications on. That would miss the point. The problem isn't your settings. The problem is the story you've attached to them. The problem is the belief that being reachable makes you weak, that being available makes you inferior, that needing connection makes you broken. Here's what I want you to do instead. Pick one person who has proven through consistency, through time, through showing up that they are safe, someone who has earned the right to interrupt your day, someone who, when you see their name on your screen, makes you feel something other than dread or exhaustion. Turn on notifications for that one person, not your email, not your social media, not your work apps, just one person who represents the kind of connection you've been avoiding, and then pay attention. Notice what happens in your body when your phone buzzes. Notice the instinct to defend, to armor up, to resent the intrusion. Notice the story that activates. I'm losing control. I'm becoming like everyone else. I'm weak. And then this is the important part. Notice what happens when you realize it's them. That one safe person. That someone is trying to reach you, not to demand something from you, but to connect with you. You don't have to answer immediately. You don't have to be available to the world. You just have to stop pretending that being unreachable is the same as being strong. Here's the new belief I want you to install. Silence is not safety. It's just silence. You've conflated the absence of demands with the presence of peace, but they're not the same thing. Peace includes connection. Peace includes being wanted, being reached for, and being part of something larger than yourself. Silence, true silence, the kind you've manufactured, is just the absence of risk. And the absence of risk is the absence of life. Every notification you've turned off is a small act of self-erasure. Every app you've silenced is a small declaration that your presence doesn't matter. Every time you manually check your phone, instead of letting it alert you, you're reinforcing the belief that you have to stay in control because being out of control is dangerous. But here's what I want you to consider. Control is not the same as safety. You can be in control of your notifications and still feel lonely. You can be unreachable and still feel unseen. You can be disciplined and still be hurting. The phone isn't the problem. Your relationship with being wanted is. Now, for those of you who need the logical framework, who are sitting there thinking, this is too emotional, I have legitimate reasons for my settings, let's address the cognitive side. There's a psychological phenomenon called the endowment effect. It's the tendency to overvalue things simply because we own them or have established them as ours. Your notification settings have become part of your psychological property. You've invested time in curating them. You've built rituals around them. They feel like yours in a way that makes any change feel like a loss. This is compounded by what psychologists call status quo bias, the tendency to prefer the current state of affairs, even when change might benefit us. Your brain has normalized zero notifications. It has become your baseline. Any deviation feels threatening, not because it actually is threatening, but because your brain resists change on principle. You might also be experiencing what's called notification fatigue, a real, documented phenomenon where digital overwhelm creates a stress response. But here's what the research shows. The solution to notification fatigue isn't zero notifications. It's curated notifications. Studies on workplace productivity have found that people with zero notifications actually experience higher anxiety than people with well-managed notifications. Why? Because uncertainty is more cognitively demanding than interruption. Your brain uses more energy constantly checking for updates than it would processing a few intentional alerts. So even from a purely cognitive standpoint, your zero notification strategy is backfiring. You've traded the stress of interruption for the stress of hypervigilance. You've traded external demands for internal ones. I want to go deeper. For some of you, this isn't just about efficiency or even about avoidant attachment. For some of you, zero notifications is a trauma response in its purest form. If you grew up in a household where attention meant danger, if you learned that being noticed meant being hurt, then silence became survival. You learned to make yourself undetectable. You learned that the safest place was the place where no one could find you. And now you have a device that lets you stay undetectable by design. But here's what I need you to understand. you are no longer that child. You are not in that environment anymore. You are not helpless anymore. You have resources, autonomy, and the capacity to choose who gets access to you. The strategy that saved you then is limiting you now. You don't have to be invisible to be safe. You don't have to be unreachable to be protected. And more importantly, you don't have to keep proving that you don't need anyone. Because the truth, the one you've been running from, is that you do. We all do. Connection is not a weakness. Needing people is not pathology. Wanting to be reached, to be thought of, to matter enough that someone wants to interrupt your day, that's not brokenness. That's humanity. So here's what I want you to do. Not today, not this week, maybe not even this month. But at some point, I want you to let one person in. Literally, one notification, one person, one crack in the wall you've built. Pick someone safe, someone whose attention doesn't feel like a demand, someone whose presence feels like an addition rather than a subtraction. Turn on notifications for them. And when their name appears on your screen, I want you to pause and notice. You are wanted, you are thought of, you matter enough to be interrupted, and you will survive it. This is the part where most creators would say, like and subscribe, but I'm not going to do that. Because if this video landed for you, if it cracked something open, if it made you uncomfortable, if it made you question a story you've been telling yourself, then the subscription doesn't matter. The like doesn't matter. What matters is what you do next. I want you to share this with one person, not for the algorithm, not for me. But if you recognized yourself in this, there's a good chance you know someone else who would recognize themselves too. Someone else who's wearing their zero notifications like armor. Someone else who's conflating independence with isolation. Send it to them, not as an accusation, never as an accusation, but as a question. Does this feel familiar? Because the first step in changing a pattern is naming it. And sometimes the person who needs to hear it most is the person you've been unreachable to. If you want more content like this, more psychological excavation, more uncomfortable truths, more maps for the territory you're navigating, then yes, subscribe. I'll be here, drilling down into the patterns you didn't know you had. But whether you subscribe or not, whether you share this or not, I want you to remember, you are allowed to be reached. You are allowed to be wanted. You are allowed to let people in. And your phone, this device you've turned into a fortress, is also a bridge. You get to decide which one it is.